Andrew Santino on comedy podcast role in politics. I think this is truly fascinating. Let's hear what he has to say about it.
You know what makes me happy? It makes me happy to know that this show is still as stupid as it's always been from the beginning, because I see a lot of our podcast pals or people in our sphere that are taking these shows to a level that we don't go to.
Which is what?
Well, they're all having like politicians on.
Journalists.
Tim got fucking interviewed by like CNN.
And you know what? That's something that's missing. But I get it. Like, I'm trying to think aloud, right? Why does that happen, do you think? These comedy podcasts usually, let me talk from my experience. I'm sure some of you guys maybe think the same or have different experience. Let me know in the stream chat. From my experience, when I first started listening to comedy podcasts, I'm not going to lie, I listened to them for a distraction from my everyday life. Like, especially back then, I was working retail, I was working in warehouses, I was doing like shitty jobs where you could get away with listening to something in your headphones, but you also didn't want to be like present. You also didn't want to be like aware that you're working this shitty job. You kind of wanted your brain to transport somewhere else. And one of the best ways to do it was to listen to a podcast in the background, because it didn't really require like super concentration, but you could listen to it passively in the background. And obviously along the way, they'll provide you with laughs, some insights here and there. But most of it was to take you away from your drudgery of your everyday life. You didn't want to be reminded about the news, current affairs, You just wanted these guys who have this really strange career as stand-up comedians to tell you all these weird and wonderful, wacky things that happened to them during their stand-up comedy journey, or to tell you some interesting factoids, things that you only know about if you fucking are like semi-unemployed and at home smoking weed, like most of these guys are, right? They were living in a house together, they're on the come up together, they're trying to figure the dream out, blah 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 blah. They're finding out all these interesting facts, they're sharing them with their fans. That's why I kind of gravitated to comedy podcast for the laughs, primarily for the laughs. But then something happened when people started to notice them. People started to notice what they were doing. They started to enjoy what they were doing, and then the mass audience came, the general public, right? The quote unquote civilians came along. And I think maybe that kind of attention, those kind of numbers naturally got to their heads a little bit. And then, of course, as we've seen on social, I think there isn't, I don't think there's many channels that I kind of stumble upon within the political space that don't get crazy views. Like that kind of talking heads, politics, news sort of like person thing. It does so well on social media. I'm not too sure why, because I feel like politics is one of the most boring things you can be into personally. I think somebody that makes that their entire personality is an incredible loser, maybe more so than the person that makes weed their entire personality. But I get why they did it, because the money is very appealing. The attention, the views is something a lot of them can't turn down, because they know if they interview the vice president of the current president, whatever, or the current administration, they know they're going to get crazy numbers. By, it doesn't even matter how good the interview is. If you interview JD Vance on your pod, you're going to get great numbers. If you interview Donald Trump, great numbers. So I get it. But I would really like, hopefully in the future, that these comedy podcasts go back to what they did best, making us laugh. Because a lot of these guys, I think most of the guys, let's say 90% of them, they're way funnier on pods anyway. Most of these guys, especially the ones that even you like, dear listener, there's probably a comedian that you like, who you've tried to listen to you tried to watch their stand-up, you tried to watch their latest special, but you just couldn't do it. It's so terrible. But that same person makes your fucking ribs split, makes you cry, laugh, tears of laughter. You know what I mean? So if that's the case and they're better on those platforms, they give their all, because those are the platforms that probably make them the most money, so they put their best foot forward. Give us the best product. Make us laugh. Take our minds away from things. Don't get on there and start opining about social issues, politics, world affairs. We don't want to hear that. We don't give a fuck about that. Just be funny. Or if you're going to do the politics thing, at least be funny doing it, At least try to be funny doing it. But none of them do that. So I'm hoping now in the future, they're seeing now the change of like, okay, cool. People want to go to people that do the whole politics thing, and that's what they talk about. They can go to them, but they come to you for an escape. That's what they come to you for. Please, for the love of God, escape with us. Help us to escape. Please, please.
Yeah.
I was like, what in the fuck is going on?
Yeah, we stay here.
Same with hyenas.
We stay right
here.
Yeah. And I saw that they had Bernie on Schultz's show.
Yo, big up Abe Martinez. Appreciate it, bro. Appreciate it. Big hearts. I would listen to AZ at my last security job for the half of the night, bro. I think I have some very my opinion about Joe Budden and the Joe Budden podcast is very toxic, and I think sometimes a little bit antagonistic and a little bit rude and a little bit venomous. But the reason why I think it's like that is because that podcast meant a lot to me, man. The way Abe Martinez says I had provided him with some level of entertainment when he was in a security job, that's how I looked at Joe Budden podcast. So when they broke up, when that shit ended the way it did, it hurt me. Like, legitimately, it hurt me because I was rooting for them. That was like my, they were like the black version of Entourage, right? I was rooting for the gang. Like, every person played a role in the group. They all had different talents. They all had different skill sets, you know? They all had different dynamics, different whatever, friendships. But in all, you wanted everyone to succeed in their own lane, right? You didn't want them to have the same success or to be in the same area, but you want them to succeed in their own thing. You were desperate for it. Right? So when they broke up the way they did, it broke my heart. Because I remember when I was working in the stockroom of Dr. Martin's in Carnaby Street, that was the first flagship stores, and I was doing fucking stock takes, and I was doing deliveries, right? And I was marking down shoes for Boxing Day sales and shit. I remember listening to the fucking Joe Budden podcast on I don't know what iPhone I had, a 6 or something. I'd have an iPhone, I'd put it in a mug, usually a Sports Direct mug, and I'd play the fucking podcast on medium volume because the manager was sitting in the office across, so he doesn't get pissed off. So I put it in a ceramic mug on medium volume and listen to the fucking Joe Budden podcast. I sometimes save it. I sometimes would avoid social media because I knew people would be talking about it. I'd avoid the Reddit, and I would save the podcast for the last 3 hours, or if I saw it was 4 hours, last 4 hours, and I'd play it for the entirety of my fucking day. And that was my escape. You know what I mean? So when those guys broke up the way they did, that shit hurt.
Yeah.
What the fuck is going on?
He's not coming here.
Bernie?
Yeah, we had David Mamet.
Yeah, Ben Affleck.
Yeah, but that's rad.
We got people that they can't get.
Yeah.
No, it's not that they can't get him.
Oh, they can get him.
Yeah.
But we got him too.
I just don't think we want politicians on the show.
No.
I think that's a strange world.
Pete Buttigieg I'd have.
He's gay?
Yeah.
No thanks.
Big up Andrew Santino. By the way, yeah, I think he'll be wasted on them too. What do you really want to hear from Bobby Lee, politics-wise? What do you really want to hear from Bobby Lee, Bobby Lee's been living this, Peter Pan life for a long time. He's 50, 60 years old? Doesn't look a day over 40, by the way. He looks fucking great for his age. But he's a little bit immature. He's a little bit, he's a little bit in his own bubble. He's a little bit of a weirdo in a good way, right? But he's not really going to have the best opinion when it comes to politics because he kind of, he moves to the beat of his own drum. He kind of does his own thing. That's what people love him for, because he's this creative, wacky, sort of ephemeral, kind of weird little Asian gnome guy. But do you really want to hear his fucking opinions about healthcare, about the minimum wage, about the housing crisis or housing shortage? I don't think he's going to really offer anything of any substance. I don't think so.
Ban it. No.
It's getting a little muddled, right? It's getting a little. What's going on?
I just think podcasting, comedy podcasting, is entering this world of news or something.
Yeah,
and people are taking it serious, and it's not.
Well, there was an article.
That's the thing. It was never meant to be serious. Don't get me wrong. You take what you do seriously, but you're not doing a serious show. You're not here with facts and figures. If anything, the early Joe Budden podcast, I don't know if you guys remember this, if you were playing it again, I keep mentioning because I've got them on my mind, but the first iteration of Joe Budden podcast with Rory and Moore on it, if you guys remember, if you watched it, they would have a thing, or they would do a thing where if they were talking about something and they go into a debate and no one knew the details, they would purposely go out of their way not to Google it. They'll be like, no research, no Googling, no information. Let's just talk about it, let's just talk out of our ass about this issue, about this topic, and make it funny. And it would be super funny, because they'd obviously get it super wrong, but they'd be loud and wrong, right? Wrong and strong type of thing. But they knew that if they just Googled it, they'd probably be disproven. But the fun is in not knowing and then just arguing off that kind of basis and just trying to make a show out of it, or maybe segue into a new topic. You don't go to these shows for hard hitting news, for facts, statistics, all this stuff. No, Go to where they provide that sort of shit and hold those guys to account. Don't put all the influence on these type of guys. You know what I mean? It doesn't make any sense. And most of them, again, are not even that smart anyway. So why would you trust what they have to say? Why would you trust their interpretation of those facts and figures? Makes no sense.
Article after the election about how legacy media doesn't have the power it once had, and that podcasting is now, you know what I mean, replacing some of that.
That's not good.
Yeah.
Exactly.
We shouldn't replace it. This should
Exactly.
be its own thing.
Yeah.
This is its own form of music.
Exactly. If anything, those news programs should try to improve their product, because what's happening is that quite clearly people feel like they're missing something. So they're trying to find it in podcasts, right? That's what it feels like. They're missing something, so they're trying to find it in podcasts. But they also want to be entertained. So when they see a comedy podcast is entertaining with somebody that might be a little bit informed, might be a little bit worldly, they kind of think, oh, this person's got the great information. Or if they get a guest on that's kind of smart and kind of well-versed in a particular subject matter, they're like, oh shit, yeah, I should listen to them. But really you shouldn't. Really you should be demanding more from the news networks, the news platforms, and asking them, hey, do you guys mind maybe improving what you got, improving your offer, improving your product? You guys maybe mind, trying to give us the news, trying to be somewhat neutral, trying to allow us, presenting all the facts, allowing us to make our own opinion? Could you maybe sometimes hold these politicians to an account, you fucking journalists, instead of fucking investigating TikTok trends and interviewing live streamers? Could you maybe, uncover something that's happening in the local community that's affecting real people? All that sort of shit. That's what it should be doing, but it doesn't happen. So here we are. People are fucking going to Joe Rogan for their fucking health, health advice and shit. You know what I mean? And how they should vote. It's fucking crazy. Big up Jordan Ray. AZ needs to do a Timmy No Breaks reaction. I don't know who Timmy No Breaks is, brother. Who's Timmy No Breaks? I don't know who that is. Big up, what's that? Big up Scrabble Bees. Bobby Lee could translate. Walter Cronkite, the only one I trust. Piers Morgan, the only one that I trust. Big up Scrabble Bees. Piers Morgan is the only one that I trust. Anyway, big up them two. Big up them two. Big up Blood Clot them too.